Ahora empieza su programa, el show del doctor Roy Aranda. Temas sobre los efectos que tiene la separación de los niños de sus padres, traumas que afrontan los indocumentados, violencia doméstica, el porqué de la violencia en las escuelas. Llámanos en vivo al 1-888-900-2811, extensión 6, y haz tus preguntas al aire. ¡Comenzamos!
Good evening, my dear Tribuna TV viewers. Buenas noches, queridos televidentes de Tribuna TV. Today is September 10th, 2020. Hoy es el día septiembre 10 del año 2020. And we're here, one more time to do a show that we hope will be of use to the viewers. The theme today, we're going to be focusing on couples. We're going to be talking about the kinds of experiences the couples are having in general, and more specifically, the kinds of experiences that they're having now during a COVID-19 pandemic. El tema de hoy vamos a bregar con parejas que normalmente tienen sus áreas de dificultad y ahora más que antes, more than before, a raíz de la pandemia COVID-19. We have a wonderful guest. Tenemos una invitada bien célebre, bien conocida, psychologist Dr. Patricia Pitta, la psicóloga la doctora Patricia Pitta. Some of you who've watched the show before may recall that there was a time that I did a show where we were focusing on how to deal with the psychological trauma stemming from the coronavirus. We've been in full coronavirus mode now for easily 6 months. Although we are getting news that there was knowledge about the coronavirus going back to January, but I don't think I touched upon it until approximately March. So, desde marzo del año actual, la vida ya es una vida a raíz de y bregando con y tratando de superar esta pandemia. So Pat generously donated a relaxation exercise some time ago. I did an exercise in Spanish and in English that day too, and I have it under advisement from her, and I will introduce her shortly, that she will do a relaxation exercise as well for the viewers today. The topic today, actually, the title is Create a Loving Couple Relationship, Foundation for Coping and Healing in Our Challenging World. En español, Crea una relación de pareja amorosa, fundación para afrontar y curar en nuestro mundo desafiante. We have a couple of big words there, challenging in English and desafiante in Spanish, and you're going to see why it is that we've chosen Dr. Patricia Pat. And to use those words, because right now the couples are certainly struggling not only with their normal, usual, typical pre-pandemic issues, but now added to it, traumas including schools. Schools have opened in most places this week, some a little bit earlier. And parents are wondering, they have some children going to school, others just doing virtual education at school. At home, there's a hybrid where some children are going to school 2 or 3 days a week, and they're doing homeschooling virtually 2 or 3 days a week. And of course, parents worry about the safety of their children. Teachers worry about their safety, the safety of their families. And the whole thing is really up in the air. Is this like experiment of what to do with schools, something that will work, and what will be the outcome as we go forward in the next few weeks. So what I did want to also inform the viewers is that the show is being recorded live on YouTube, and tomorrow it will be available on the website of Tribuna TV, Vimeo, Facebook, and I'm guessing other social media platforms as well. So if you'd like to take some photos of some of the slides that I'm going to put up today, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, you can take screenshots once you have the recording published. Okay, so what I wanted to start with is just putting up the introduction for today, and then I also have another dedication that I'd like to make, and I'll fill you in momentarily. Por favor, ¿me puede poner slide one? Oscar? Oh, Oscar, say hello. Oscar is like...
Hi, hello.
Oscar is like the silent contributor here, the producer of the show.
Okay.
Tienes? Okay, so basically, I'm going to be introducing momentarily Dr. Patricia, and she and I will explore in today's show the ingredients for a successful couple relationship in both normal times and especially now in our new normal times, defined pretty much as a coping that we have stemming from the horrible COVID-19 pandemic that has changed the way we live. We must closely examine our relationship with our partner and spouse to build a strong foundation that enables the couple to communicate effectively, to show and express affections for each other, and to solve dilemmas that typically arise in any couple's life on a regular basis. And the show, I'm dedicating it to all couples who are coping with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And there is a photo of Dr. Patricia Pitta. Puede sacar el slide y por favor ponle a la imagen de ella. So I wanted to start by introducing Pat as well. Hi, Pat.
Hi there, how are you?
Say hello.
Hello there.
Puede decirlo en español también. I know you speak some Spanish. Hola.
Buenas noches.
Okay, so Dr. Pitta, she's a clinical psychologist, board-certified couple and family psychologist. She specializes in family therapy and couples therapy. She's published books. She's been featured in videos. Her first book, Solving Modern Family Dilemmas and Assimilative Family Models. She co-edited a book entitled Integrative Couple and Family Therapies, Treatment Models for Complex Clinical Issues, which was published by the American Psychological Association. She's been featured in many videos produced by the American Psychological Association and parenting your elderly parents. So she's in private practice in Manhasset, which is in New York, Long Island. And she's an adjunct professor at St. John's University and the coordinator of the continuing education within the Department of Initiatives and Postgraduate Studies for Psychology. She's past president of the Clinical Division of the New York State Psychological Association, National Family Academy of Professional Psychology, and is presently the vice president of practice in the Division of Couple and Family Psychology within the American Psychological Association. She has held many other offices nationally and has published many papers. You can learn about her at drpatriciapitta.com. When I put up a slide at the end of the show on resources, you'll see her website, and she'll share some information about it. So Pat, did I leave anything out? I mean, I know your CV must be about 100 pages long by now.
You did a beautiful job, thank you.
Okay. So I did want to, just before we get started, I did want to mention that I have not forgotten, and I'm pretty sure that most people have not forgotten. No creo que hay a nadie que se olvida de 9/11. We don't forget about 9/11. Today is September 10th. Tomorrow is the 19th anniversary of 9/11. And I did want to mention that publicly on the show today. And I wanted to dedicate just two brief slides for 9/11. ¿Me puedes poner a slide number 2? So I'm dedicating this memorial to 9/11 to my good friend, retired Captain Terry Rivella, a 9/11 survivor. He was a guest on this show. I asked him could he donate like a little something to the viewers? And he wrote this: yesterday never was, 'cause it's gone forever. Tomorrow never will be, 'cause when it's tomorrow, it's today. So never forget those we lost and those still suffering from the unwanted attack of 9/11. No matter what, live, love, cherish, because none of us is getting out of this alive. So you can see his picture to the screen, and also a photo that he sent me that he took when he was present there in 9/11. So Terry, this is in honor of you and the firefighters and all of the people, first responders who was there, as well as the victims who suffered so much. And I would like to show you also a dedication that I entitled the Firefighters Song. Es la próxima, Oscar. Slide 3. Es un poco largo, so cuando acabe mitad vas a tener que bajarlo. I'm going to read it to you, and you'll be able to take a screenshot of it tomorrow if you like. Firefighter's Song. I wrote this shortly after 9/11. The tranquil air of the station house is shattered by the sudden blasting of the alarm. He rises to his feet to ready to battle a fire and save lives. Something seems different, however, in that penetrating sound of despair. A sense of foreboding, some doom. He wondered, would he come back today? As the fire engine speeds, he sees in their eyes a worried look unlike before. Off in the distance, a cloud of smoke marring a bright blue sky. In a moment he sees and can't help but gasp. Is it possible? Can it be? Our symbol of greatness, those twin majestic towers burning before his very eyes. People are jumping, debris everywhere, lower Manhattan brought to its knees. The heat is intense, an air of panic pervades. A tear swells in his eye, and a horrid fear sets in. But he rushes to do his job. He rushes to aid, to help douse the fire as intense as the sun's very core. He gives his life that day, and in his mind, his last parting thoughts: tell my family I love them. Tell God that I tried. So this is for you, Terry, and for everyone who suffered from 9/11, my dedication to 9/11. Puedes sacarlo. So I get goosebumps every time I read that, but it's okay. I'm glad I get emotionally affected every time. And I vowed never to forget, and I plan never to forget. So, Pat, I'm going to have a whole bunch of questions for you. You ready to take the challenge?
Sure.
Okay, so let's start with, since we're talking about relationships and couples, how would you define a healthy and secure relationship? Let's talk about a good relationship before we look at some of the issues that come up.
Okay, well, when I think of a healthy and secure relationship, I think of a partnership. And a partnership, when people first meet, they say they fall in love. But in my mind, people fall in infatuation. And what that really means is you fall in love with that which you want. And you actually project onto the other person sometimes things that aren't even there. And so when you're in the stage of infatuation, you're getting all those great little oxytocin and all the hormones running through your body, and you're feeling absolutely wonderful. But that period only lasts for a certain amount of time. Some, it lasts for longer and others shorter. And when that period is kind of done with, then the couple actually can look at each other for maybe who the other person is. And then they start seeing, there's that popular song with all your curves and all your edges, all your perfect imperfections. And so then they start seeing the person for who they really are. And lots of parts of that person could be really great, but maybe other parts can be maybe not as comfortable in terms of what you thought they were.
So by projection, just for the viewers, by projection for the viewers, that sort of means that you yourself are putting some of your own values, needs, emotions, and sort of putting it onto another person. So you're sort of like creating to a certain extent an idealized image of what you would like, and that's where you first begin to to come up with an image, and that's the projection. Did I more or less say correctly?
A simple way of thinking about it is you just put your wishes on the other person, the wishes of what you'd like to be or see. So then what happens is when that period kind of wanes, then couples come to a place where they say, do we want to go further and commit to having a relationship, or do we part? And for people who want to continue to be together, they start building a partnership. And there's a commitment. And when you make that commitment, there are goals and values discussed, and also, hopefully, healthy and proper ingredients to make a relationship work. Now, so many couples that come to see me that are in committed relationships. Today, not everyone gets married any longer. They stay in relationships without marriage. They have children without marriage. So a relationship it's a very different definition in our new world. And so what the ingredients need to be discussed before couples really go further into commitment. And let me just tell you what some of the ingredients are. Do you know the most common reason why couples do break up? The most common reason is money. So that's really important for couples to discuss if they are going into a committed relationship. Is one, how are you going to deal with money? How are you going to share your money? Who is going to make the money? How are you going to budget your money? What are you going to spend your money on? What are you going to save? And is there going to be some money just for each member of the couple to spend independently? Because if there's too much control, when there's too much control, there's a lack of freedom. And what do people do when they feel a lack of freedom? They rebel. Another ingredient in a relationship to have a good and healthy one is the ability to be intimate, which is expressed in sexuality and in showing affection. And people's level of ability to be intimate is like a dance. That's how I see it. So when you get on the dance floor, there are couples who can really dance gracefully together, while there are couples that really stumble. And the same thing goes with expressing our emotions. Some couples don't struggle as much, while others struggle quite a bit. So you really need to discuss what are your emotional needs as individuals and as couples. And you also need to share your fantasies about what you would like and then what is possible.
I've seen situations in many patients where they're equating intimacy with sex, and lack of sex or withholding sex for any of a number of reasons is tied into, well, you don't appreciate me the way I do, or you don't love me, and they're sort of putting all their eggs in the basket in terms of sexual function, and not looking at other things, just like holding a hand or touching or sharing time watching a movie together or sharing a meal, and actually that can be just as conducive, if not more conducive, to developing intimacy.
Well, it's very interesting that you say that. I see that when people commit, when a couple commits, immediately a dance begins for power and control. And then that is brought to the sexual relationship, because couples that are feeling powerless many times will use sexual expression to try to control the other. So it's really a matter of power and control. And in order to have the dance move properly of relationship, it needs to be shared. The power needs to be shared. The control needs to be shared. And you know what people say, well, is it always 50-50? No, it's really not always 50-50. It's some days 90-10, but then other days 30-70, and hopefully some days 50-50. So that's what happens, as I see, in a healthy relationship. It moves, it flows. Another area when you're in a committed relationship, if you are going to be having children, how many couples have come to me and they say, gosh, I'm in this marriage, we'll say they're married, and my partner only wants to have one child, but I really want 3. And I will say, well, did you discuss before you two decided to join as a couple and procreate how many children you wanted? And the person will say, no, I really didn't. I said, well, honestly, you didn't know your partner in this area. So then this is where it's really important that people start to talk and see if they can negotiate either to accept what their one child, or possibly maybe they'll agree to have another child or so. And we'll talk in a little bit about communication and how important communication is in a relationship. But before I do that, I'd like to talk about relationships with extended family. If you are going to be in a committed relationship, it's very important that the extended family is healthy enough and strong enough to be able to invite this new member, who is the spouse, into their family. And at the same time, it's really important for the couple to discuss how they see the incorporation of extended family. So a lot of this has to do with culture. There are certain cultures that, they believe that every Sunday should be Family Sunday. I'm Italian extract and French, and I know when my parents were young, they were obliged to go see their parents every Sunday. That has changed over the generations. But it's really important for couples to talk about, well, how are we going to, what kind of time are we going to give our extended family? How important is that to us? While some families might say, it's not very important, I'll see my families on the holidays, while other people will say, no, I want to see my family weekly. And you really have to know what each partner really, how they view life and how they see it, and really negotiate that. Because I have more couples in my office fighting about, are we going to have to go see your mom or your dad or your cousin or your sister next weekend? And then I also get the complaints where, especially if families live close by, gosh, your family's always stopping in. They don't even call. And that becomes a bone of contention for the couple.
How does all of this play out, though, during a pandemic where most people are being told to shelter in and not go out that much, and it's not like you're necessarily going to run off and see your extended family every weekend, or they're going to come over to visit you either? And I'm guessing that a lot of the viewers now are not in the market necessarily for going out. Certainly discos are closed, churches are pretty much closed. So some of the traditional avenues for meeting a partner, developing that kind of relationship have have become dramatically limited. I guess we're talking about Facebook and LinkedIn and some social media, but I'm wondering what how you see the pandemic playing a role in some of these kinds of decisions and coupling that couples have to make now.
Well, I can say that one of the biggest areas that I know that I have heard from many clients and also myself and friends, one of the big disappointments during the height of the incubation period when we were staying in and isolating at home was the loss of being able to see the family. And I think for many people, what it's shown is the importance of family. I think that's one of the good pieces of this pandemic. It has shown people how important family is. So I think in terms of the pandemic, I think people have come to appreciate the importance of family.
So the pandemic has opened up our eyes in many ways, and I did want to let the viewers know, because we focused on this before. We've talked about going forward and, what are some of the kinds of outlets that are available, and that not everything must be horrible because of the pandemic. The pandemic is horrible. Okay, that's horrible. That's something that we don't, there's nothing we can do specifically about the virus. But how we cope in our lives despite the pandemic is something that's still very much up for grabs. And I think that there are, there's a downside. There are inappropriate behaviors and negative consequences of some of our behaviors, but also there are some very good things. People have developed excellent coping skills. I guess they're reaching out to families more on Facebook or WhatsApp or Zoom and some kind of video platforms. And like you said, they're appreciating having missed it. And on those occasions now where there are outings, I'm guessing that the value and the significance of the outing has become really so much more important.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. And I can just talk personally that when we finally started to see our children and grandchildren, at first we weren't able to touch each other. We just had to keep at a distance. And you really felt the tension that you just wanted to get your grandchildren, your children, and hug them. But over the summer, I have to say we've all had a fresher breath, a breath of fresh air, and have been able to be with our families on the outside. And I know many people are saying they really fear what's coming up ahead with the fall and the winter being locked in again and not being able to see family. I was just talking with someone today, and they said, what's going to happen over the holidays? What's going to happen at Thanksgiving? Are we going to be able to see our families? And I said, I really don't know. We really don't know what's going to be coming. We hope that we will be, but there's a large possibility, especially if you are in a certain age bracket or you have health issues, you might not be able to. And so what that's doing is that's causing, what this pandemic has caused is a great deal of anticipatory anxiety and complicated anxiety because this is going on for so long. And that's really difficult for all of us to handle.
I have some questions later on in the show that actually come from patients that I'll throw out at you, because I think that some of these would be very applicable to many of the viewers. So you're actually sort of a segue to that coming up a little bit later in the show. What are some of the conflicts that couples are experiencing presently?
Well, as you said, with the pandemic, parents and couples had to become cooks, teachers, do their jobs, and just do so many chores that maybe sometimes they would be able to get other people to help them. That was no longer available. And also there's been a lot of financial stress for many people. So that puts tremendous strain on couples and gives them so much anxiety.
And
so,
additional financial worries now that we're hearing that there's probably going to be reclosings of restaurants and some other places of social gathering, as well as violations that are being handed out as a result of people not keeping social distancing or wearing face masks. And I'm wondering if you, I'm pretty sure you agree with me, but I'm wondering if you can put a voice out of caution to all the viewers that the science clearly shows that you've got to really maintain a certain amount of distance and wear the mask. That's ultimately the only way that with time we're going to control this horrific pandemic. Otherwise we're going to keep going, up and down, up and down, up and down. And we're asking questions like, well, what's going to happen Thanksgiving? I'll go further. What's going to happen around the Christmas and the Jewish holidays and the other religious holidays? So all of this, as far as I'm concerned, are areas that are unknown because we have different responses, not just in New York, but different responses across the country. And I know that we have many viewers from California. And by the way, my heart goes out to the Californians about the fires. I really feel heartbroken that you're experiencing that. That's very spontaneous. I just thought I'd throw it in. We have hurricanes that are working their way up. We have all of these natural disasters and tragedies on top of a pandemic, and we don't really have measured, consistent ways of handling it. But so that was what other? I sort of cut you off a little bit. What other kinds of conflicts are people experiencing? The financial would be one. Questions, I guess, about school.
And also, they're experiencing, say, a lack of diversion. Before, you'd be able to go out to dinner easily. You'd be able to go to a movie. So people are not having the usual diversions to help them deal with just the regular stresses in life and the regular anxieties that are just in life in general. So what I suggest for couples, and some couples have been very inventive, they'll make, after they put their kids to bed at 9 o'clock or 8:30, what they'll do is they'll make a date night. And they'll have dinner, and they'll put a candle, they'll set the table up as if they're in a restaurant and make it a date night. They'll have movie night. They'll listen to concerts on the computer. People are finding ways to bring fun into their life.
You're limited by how creative you're willing to be.
Right. And it means also putting effort in. And you know what? Really, what is love? Love is your effort and your energy and your caring and your compassion in action. That's what love is. What I talked about in the beginning of the show, infatuation is the great stuff that we all love. But in order to really have love, you really have to work at all the parts of the relationship over time to experience love in its fullest. It's actually action.
What are some emotions that, like couples you're working with, or from what you've read or lectured about, what are some emotions that couples are experiencing now?
Well, people are experiencing high levels of anxiety. And I think this is not only for couples, but for individuals. Everyone is feeling a level of anxiety. And what I tell people to do, and we can do it right now, and I'd like the audience to do it, is You know, when a mom holds a baby, they hold the baby like under the arms. So what I tell people is to cross their arms like this when they're feeling anxious. Take a deep breath. And then put the intention that you would like to change or feel. And what I tell people is just say something like, I know I'll be able to deal with whatever it is, and I just need to help myself relax. So I want everybody to cross their hands, take in a deep breath,
Like
say
this?
intention.
Sort of like this?
Yes.
Or like a little baby. Okay.
Okay.
It's
And
like
then-
it's like you're loving yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then let out that deep breath. Now let's do it again, because the first time you really don't get the feeling of it. Let's do it now. Again, cross your arms. Take in a deep breath. Say your intention. Let out your breath. And now release your arms. How does that feel, Roy?
I had a physical reaction.
Yeah? What was it?
A little bit of like goosebumps. I mean, it was a good feeling.
Yeah.
The breathing in and of itself is wonderful. I'm very familiar with that, but the actual, it's like loving yourself, you know, not just sitting all the time blah blah and bland, but you're actually doing something to caress a body part. And obviously, you know, the notion of holding a baby and burping a baby and all of that, that's a maternal and I guess a paternal instinct. I don't want to leave the men out, but it's an instinct that's so deeply ingrained that it has to come from somewhere.
And remember, when we become overwhelmed with anxiety, the limbic part of our brain, which is the one that it gets all overwired, then our thinking part and our creative part just closes down. So when we do this exercise, we calm down the limbic part of our brain, and we're able to think calmer, and we're able to be creative with ourselves, and we're able to love ourselves. And you've heard the expression that you can't love somebody unless you love yourself. So you really need to start with self-care in a relationship to be able to care for another person. So it's really important that both members, and within this pandemic, it's really been important that people take care of themselves. And I know for myself, really, at one point, the only thing I could do was, God bless, I can do my work because I was able to do it over Zoom. The only other thing I was able to do was to go take walks. And it was a lifesaver. And I know the poor dogs, everybody's dog is exhausted because everybody in the family was picking up the dog and saying, come on, let's go. And the dog is saying, oh, please, I want to rest. Can you people go back to work,
The poor pet wants a little bit of downtime. Get away from my neurotic parent for a while.
Right. And you know what? It's another thing I want to mention about anxiety. With anxiety, people do one of two things. They either move closer to people because they want that comfort, or they move away. And it's all based on who you are and what your style is in terms of dealing with anxiety. Now, this is where couples get into a lot of problems. It's because if you have one person who likes to distance when they're anxious and the other person who likes to come close, what do you have? Conflict. Because you have the person who wants to be close running after the other person is saying, stay away, and then they're fighting. So that's one of the big issues that people talk about when they come into couple therapy. And I do put it in the model of the dance. You two have to figure out how you can dance where there's enough space for you as an individual, but there's also enough unity for you two as a couple.
You know, the irony is that to the extent that one member can read the other member a little bit more accurately and respect that member's needs and give the space and distance needed, ironically, it's been my experience that that other person becomes more willing to get closer, and if anything, it bridges the gap and you start having less tension and more unity.
I agree with what you're saying. And it also comes from patterns that are learned in your family of origin. How you were related to. Did you have parents that were maybe more distant and closeness was not really a part of the family interaction? Or did you have a family where everybody smothered each other? So it really is somewhat learned, and it's something that you are used to. So couples really need to be able to work out this anxiety dance. And many times people are fighting because they're anxious. They need to get this anxiety out of them.
But this raises a very important question that I'd like you to address, because you mentioned it before. Obviously, people are not going to be necessarily magicians or that good at reading. You know, I guess with passage of time, some people learn to read the other member of the couple a little bit more efficiently and more effectively. But ultimately, we're talking about communication. There's verbal communication and there's nonverbal communication. Obviously, pulling away, backing off to a corner is nonverbal. But what sort of ways of, you have to open up the door in terms of communication. And yelling is not a particularly effective way of communicating, and totally shutting up and climbing up and not saying anything is not an effective way of communication either. So what kind of insights can you give couples in terms of making a communication that's not threatening, that's assuming ownership, so the person's owning the communication and delivered in a way that's not intended to threaten the person who's hearing the communication?
You know, Roy, you just said something very, very important, that people need to own what they say. And what I do is I teach people how to communicate. Because when I think about a relationship, communication is to a relationship as water is to life. So what I help people do is to learn how to listen and how to respond effectively. So what I do is I help people practice together how to listen and communicate with each other. So this is what I tell them. They need to listen. They need to repeat in their own words what they think they heard, and then respond.
Did you want to do a quick example?
Oh, absolutely. Because what happens is when people hear something, many times they become flooded with emotion. And they're not even really hearing what the person said. They're maybe hearing what they heard years ago or something that's being triggered. So when you get the person to repeat what they thought they heard, that really helps calm the anxiety. So let's do a little scenario.
I'm the angry husband who feels that alienated because you're not paying as much attention to me as I'd like. So I'm walking around pissed off, pardon my language. but that's how I'm feeling.
Okay. So what I just heard, Roy, is that you're feeling dismissed by me and I'm not giving you enough attention.
Yeah, but you know this. I mean, come on, you know this. Every time I come here and I try to say something to you, you don't give me the time of the day.
I understand. You sound very upset right now.
Yeah, I'm upset. You'd be upset too if you were in my shoes.
Yes, I hear that you're upset, but you're not doing what the therapist told us to do. I am validating what you're saying. And then what I'm going to do is let's see how I can be more responsive to you. So why don't we
Pay
do
attention
this?
to me when I ask you to pay attention to me.
What?
You can pay attention to me when I ask you to pay attention to me and not be so holier than thou.
Well, you want to hear? I would like to be able to do that. What you're saying is you want me to give you more attention. How about we do this? How about, say, after dinner, we spend 10 or 15 minutes talking about things that are important to you and to me? Would that be a form of attention?
You know, that's not a bad idea. We usually don't do that. I'm usually eating, watching sports, and I don't particularly feel like helping you wash the dishes. So that, I guess that's on me.
So, I have a great idea. So you're saying that maybe you would help me wash the dishes, and then we would have more time to be together. Is that reasonable?
Well, I guess it makes sense because, you know, like you're actually the one preparing the meal, and I do want you to know that I appreciate that. I mean, you know, I didn't want you to think that I ignore that all the time. So I like the idea. I like the idea of like a powwow type of thing where we're talking a little bit, maybe after a meal, and, you know, maybe we can get together and, you know, I'm glad. It sounds like you're listening to me right now, and I do appreciate that.
And you know what? It makes me feel good that you're sounding softer towards me and not feeling angry with me. And I think this is the beginning of something that we can work on.
Well, I can hardly wait to tell the therapist next time we get there.
Yes.
I hear this Dr. P, she's really wonderful.
So, see, what you're doing is you're opening up the avenue to heal and repair rather than to just stay in the conflict or feel rejected or angry.
But viewers need to know that it's not all going to be magical the way it was between us. And you have to work it. It's not necessarily going to be that every time you do it, it's going to work. But you have to be patient and try. And if you yourself are finding that you're having difficulty delivering your own message, and then you become angry as a result of it, probably the smartest thing to do would be to back away and regroup and come back another time.
Yeah, if I can just repeat for the audience, have the person say in their own words what the other person just said to them. By doing that, you're validating the person, and usually their anxiety and their anger will decrease. And then you give a sensitive, warm response in return that addresses that feeling, and usually things subside and get better, and people relate better. You know, another problem that people come into me with is, you know, you mentioned before, Roy, about one of the couples, the other member reading the other. Many times, a big problem is that one partner does not read the other. And that's really called emotional intelligence. And sometimes people need help with becoming more emotionally intelligent. So really what you need to teach them to do is to become better at making an alliance with their partner. And what does that mean? It means listening to them, showing them compassion, showing them empathy, showing them you understand. So that's really important.
Touching, being affectionate, being willing to shed a tear every now and then. There's nothing wrong with crying together. I mean, we're living in an era that I think it's perfectly acceptable to shed tears when you feel that you're lost. You don't know what to do. I think that that's okay. You don't have to sit there and hold it in all the time and use I messages. I feel this way. I feel this way. Not you did this, but I feel this way.
Well, you know, it's really important also in a relationship, and this is any relationship, not only couple, to show your gratitude. It's really important that we let people know that we are grateful for what they do, for who they are. And, in order to have a good relationship, whether it's between husband and wife, partners, parents and children, is that people are able to be who they are, and there are no abusive consequences for who you are. So that means that you don't criticize the other person, you don't judge the other person, and you support the other person. And if you do have a conflict or a differing opinion, you communicate and talk it out. If you can talk it out, you can work through anything in life.
I have found some interesting ways of breaking the ice doing communication. Given that we are in a world now that we're relying so much on our iPhones, smartphones, social media, it's sometimes like fun and loving to like take a picture of something that you like and text it to your partner, so that like it lightens it up, like a little picture. Like my wife and I, we are absolute pet adorers. And I know that if I send her a photograph of this like really cutesy little dog, she's going to say, "Oh my God, that is so lovely." And it's sort of like, it feels good. I mean, it feels good. So that if there was something that had been somewhat tense prior to this, it sort of seems to all of a sudden not be that important. So you can use some of these props or some of these things, what your partner likes. Or if your partner is on the phone, respect that she or he is on the phone talking. Don't feel obligated to interrupt or become, part of it, and don't infringe on somebody's Kool-Aid, as my wife says to me every now and then. "Hi, Irma, I'm throwing you in on this show." So, oh, by the way, that's my new hairstyle is thanks to Nurse Irma, the new hairstylist at my home. But but I think that props probably work very nicely.
You know what? Also, I want to bring up, and I think you're absolutely right. It's very important to have fun in your relationship. You need to be able to have fun because, life, especially through this pandemic, is difficult. There's no doubt about it. It's difficult emotionally. It's difficult physically in terms of all the things we have to do, all the changes we have to make, and the adaptations we have to make. So it's important to find ways to have fun within this new normal.
You talked also about expressing gratitude. The flip side of that is to express, "I'm sorry. I screwed up. Forgive me."
Right.
I don't think we do enough of that.
I agree with you. Many people get stuck in their own way. They get stuck in their own way and they can't say they're sorry. But I would like to talk about the side of forgiveness. People think that when we forgive, we forget. No, we don't forget. But when we forgive, you know who we're really forgiving? We're forgiving ourselves. Because if we hold on to anger, it destroys ourselves. So we need to be able to forgive. And hopefully the person that we're relating to can be remorseful and express sorrow so we can move on and take the relationship to a higher level than when we were functioning before we had a disagreement or whatever it was. Because with disagreements and arguments, many times the couple rose to much higher levels of functioning together when they solved that problem. Life isn't always just, everything is perfect. And that's what people say to me. In terms of life, are there many ups and downs? Look at our lives right now. There are so many ups and downs. We don't know which way we're getting hit. Are we getting hit with the tsunami of the pandemic, with all the things that are going on in our political arena, with the weather? The changes in the weather seem to be tremendous. So we're getting hit on so many different levels. So really what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to find ways to talk, resolve, forgive, so we can move on.
You know, the adage, the old adage, don't go to bed angry, I'm sure fits in very nicely here. Maybe there's something to say about a couple right around the time of bedtime, whether it's together or not. Whether you go to bed exactly at the same time or not. But that might be an ideal time to actually, decompress and any animosity or any tension that existed during the day. That would be a good time to put it aside, and maybe just say a few words. I love you. Can I do something for you tomorrow? Or what are we doing tomorrow? What's the plan for tomorrow? Something, just not to take that anger with you to bed.
You know how I look at it is that you have to be constantly falling in love again. And there's a song, a popular song, people fall in love in mysterious ways. It's maybe just a touch of a hand. So it could be just such a simple act of putting your arm around somebody, touching their hand, looking at them in the eyes, letting them know that you're there for them, you care for them. That's really important. And as times are very difficult, maybe we need to do more of that, showing our affection towards our partner in a way that our partner can receive it. Remember, it's not just about what you want to give to them, but you have to realize what they can accept.
I can't believe how much we've gone on and on. I did want to at least ask you one or two questions from patients or viewers before we totally run out of time.
Okay.
And then, we'll talk about resources, and I'll ask you to share a little bit of something about your website. But from a patient, I have here, my wife takes care of the children's schooling at home and many household chores. She's too tired for me when I come home. What can I do?
Well, this is a very common problem, and especially in the pandemic. The women are really working so hard, and so are the men. But if the man is out of the house and the woman, and they come home and their wife is tired, the best way to get to a wife's heart is through the children. Help her out with the children. Be with the children. Give her, when you come home after your dinner, you say, you know what, I'll put the kids to bed tonight. You go take a bath and relax, and then she'll have energy for you.
Also, not too distant from that particular question. The children fight and don't listen. How do I set limits and rules? I think that's very important. The rules, so that the viewers can have some idea of what to do with their children. Obviously, setting rules for ourselves as adults is not a bad idea either.
Well, you know what? We human beings, we all want rules. Really, when you're talking about children, if you ask them to make rules for themselves, this has been studied, they are much tougher on themselves than parents will ever be on children. And maybe in another show we can talk about parenting. But what's really important with children is to tell them what you expect and then follow through. This is where parents really go off, is that they say what they want the children to do, but when the children don't do it, they don't follow through. So they're giving the message that you really don't have to listen to me. But maybe another show we can talk about parenting.
No, that'll be good, because obviously there's much more than meets the eyes here. Although we've covered quite a bit. I did want to ask you one more question, and then before I get Oscar giving me that Oscar look, we'll go into the resources. But I did want to ask you just one more question. This goes, I guess, somewhat to a disagreement between a couple as to risks involved in the pandemic. My husband takes unnecessary risks, and it makes me very tense and frightened. What can I do? Obviously, this applies not only to a husband, but can apply to a wife and to the kids.
Well, this is a very, very big problem today, is that people are interpreting what they can do in terms of, you're talking about risks in terms of the pandemic?
Yeah, risk going out. For instance, like with the college students right now, they're going out, they're hanging out, they're socializing as if there was no pandemic. And look at all the problems with schools right now.
Right. Well, this is a very big problem, and it's causing fights in many, many homes, and particularly amongst the teenagers and young adults who are living at home, because the young adults feel that even if they got corona, they will not really get that sick, which is not really true. Some do get very sick. But what you need to do is you really need to sit and talk and tell them how you feel, and then set rules and limits. And if they're not going to follow the limits, especially for these college students, you're going to say you're not going to be able to live with us if you're going to, put our lives at risk, or maybe there's an elderly grandparent around. You can't do this. So you're really going to have to be able to talk. You want to get there thinking. It's very interesting, Roy, but some people feel that this pandemic is not that bad, or it's not that dangerous. And, I'm not here to question that, but that's some people's thinking. So you need to really explore, what is the fantasy? What are your thoughts behind your actions? And then maybe if you can talk about that, you can come to a way to resolve what you are going to do, what you are going to allow in your home.
Okay. I'm going to show the resources now and give you sort of a last word when we get to your website, anything that you want to add to that, and then we'll close out with some final parting thoughts, okay? Oscar, ¿puede poner slide 5?
Okay, wait a minute.
El 5.
Okay.
Yes. You have, the viewers know how to reach me. That's my name and phone number on the left. And I did want to mention that Dr. Peter Canaris is a consultant to this show, and I'm always grateful to him. Thank you, Peter, for all that you do, and I wanted to give you a shout out. His business card, phone number is up there to the right side of the screen. You will hear from him again next week as well. I've mentioned New York State Psychological Association, NISPA. You have the address and the website. They're the largest psychological association in New York. The American Psychological Association, which is the parent association of all of the state associations and provinces. And underneath Suffolk County Psychological Association. I live in Suffolk County, and I always like to give them a shout out. They're wonderful, a wonderful group of people, very professional, wonderful, wonderful website. You get a lot of terrific information from there. Pat, you're at the top, drpatriciapitta.com. Do you want to share some thoughts about your website, or tell the viewers what they might be able to see if they go there?
What I did for this show is I made up a PowerPoint on healthy relationships. So if you go onto my website at drpatriciapitta.com, you will be able to click on PowerPoints, and you'll be able to see a PowerPoint that gives you information about how to have healthy couple and family relationships. And also on my website is a relaxation exercise, a longer one than we did today, that can help you with your anxiety related to COVID and many, many other parts of our lives that makes us anxious. And just to let you know that some closing thoughts is that we are all full of love, and it's really important that we stay in touch with the love inside of us and we express it to those around us by showing our gratitude, being kind and compassionate, and learning to forgive. Thank you.
I'm going to extend to that and tell the viewers that we also need to be aware of our neighbors. We need to be aware of our communities and be willing to extend our affection, love, concern, and interest to them also. We are stronger to the extent that we come together. The fact that we have social distancing doesn't mean that we have to be distanced. We can maintain contact with one another through the phone, through FaceTime, through video chats, Zoom. There are myriad ways of maintaining contact with other people, with the outside world. Social distancing is just a physical distance to keep us safe when we're in the physical proximity one and another. Not that we should alienate our neighbors, our community, and society. So, Pat, I wanted to really give you like a big appreciation. I gave you a virtual hug through the distance. I'm even loving myself a little bit. Yes, I give you the virtual love. Oscar, ¿quieres despedirte? No cuelgues todavía. I do want to let the viewers know that next week, September 17, I am celebrating my 2nd anniversary of doing this TV show. So Peter Canaris is going to be with me, and he'll actually interview me. We have a nice video clip of all the shows that I've done. Actually, with this show, this one I believe is like number 42. Next week's will be 43. That's a lot in 2 years. A lot of shows. So I decided, let's have a little anniversary and celebrate. I put a little bit of musical background, and I want to thank Ezequiel. Gracias, Ezequiel, who put the video. He created the video, and gracias, Emilio, the boss, the overall boss. I've known him for way more than 2 years, but we've been very tight on the show for the past 2 years. Oscar, muchas gracias, agradecido. Thank all the viewers who have watched. Again, my hopes that we all weather the storm of the pandemic. There are many things, as you can see, that we can do despite the pandemic. Don't let the pandemic beat you. Figure out how to beat the pandemic, and I think we can do that. And also, my deepest expression of love for the victims and the survivors and the responders and all who have suffered because of 9/11. That's tomorrow. So, con eso me despido de todos. Thank you once again, Pat. Gracias, Oscar. Thank you, all the viewers. Be safe. See you next week.
Bye now.